So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Manas. Unfortunately, due to a family medical emergency, Giulio Bonazzi, the founder of Aquafil, could not join us today in person. But he's recorded his view in an interaction with Saachi. And I think let's start off by having a look at what he had to say.
Giulio Bonazzi is an innovator and disruptor spearheading Aquafil, a leading player in the global carpet and textile materials industry. Where others see waste, he saw an opportunity. After several years of R&D, he was able to develop a regenerated nylon from waste. This textile is known as Econyl and is used by some of the biggest design houses of fashion. The parent company, Aquafil, is recognized as a sustainability leader, a stalwart example of the circular economy, and an innovator within the synthetic textile industry. Welcome, Giulio.
Hi, Saachi, and thank you for having me.
Today, sustainability is the big buzzword globally, Giulio. Could you tell us what is Econyl and what led you towards recycling materials so many years ahead in time in 2011?
Econyl is a beautiful nylon yarn, but with a very different story, because instead of coming from oil and using petrochemical resources, it comes entirely from waste. And waste sometimes that are particularly ugly, like fishing nets or carpets at the end of life, and other scraps that are normally non-utilized by the plastic industry. And this, of course, with a very low carbon footprint, something like 90% lower than a conventional nylon, and giving the possibility to designers and engineers not to change anything, because it's exactly identical of the one coming from oil. Actually, Saachi, we started this journey at the beginning of the century when we did realize that it was absolutely necessary to change for a company like Aquafil. You can imagine. High energy consumer, of course, coming from petrochemical derivatives. It's just a matter of when you go out of business, not of if. And so we decided to change, and we started our journey. 2007, we formalized it with our internal, we call it Eco Pledge, and 2011, finally, the first Econyl plant started up.
You just mentioned much of Econyl is made from different types of waste, including post-consumer waste and specifically fish nets. What have been your greatest insights visiting some of the most polluted areas of the world with enormous amounts of waste waiting to be recycled? And how far do you believe can we truly reverse this footprint today?
Well, Econyl is 100% coming from waste, and we pretend that at least 50% of this content is coming from post-consumer streams. And fishing nets or carpets are the two biggest post-consumer streams. And fishing nets are more often coming from the most beautiful and pristine places around the world. For example, aquaculture, the major country is Norway, the second largest is Chile, and by coincidence, I've just returned from a business trip to Chile, where we are establishing our activity of fishing net collection. Well, you can imagine Patagonia, the most pristine and beautiful place in our planet, plenty of farming that, of course, if not made properly, they can risk really to damage and to change the local biodiversity and the local environment. So it is absolutely necessary that the people there take care of it. So to reverse the trend, it will take time, but I'm sure that we have started this journey. We have to be positive and step by step trying to solve one problem at a time.
Do you reckon fashion is truly ready to accelerate these sustainability initiatives on the design board, especially when it comes to new and innovative materials? And is it just the fast fashion or the luxury fashion industry that's more receptive, according to you?
Well, as you very well know, there has been someone who started this already even 1 century ago, so during 90s. And then other luxury fashion houses, like, for example, I like to mention Stella McCartney, among others, but there are many that really made of this point the most important pillar of the strategy. Clearly, there is a big difference between luxury companies and fast fashion. It's a diverse universe, maybe not even a word. For luxury company, I believe that is more important to continue to design more artistic or art rather than simple textile products. And that, of course, second-hand or possibility of reusing also for our future generations is where they have to go, and actually where they are going. We have seen Gucci now that has announced an incredible program of, coming to this result. Clearly, for fast fashion is different, or for let's say products that are having a different lifespan, and they have to change. And eco-design is the key and most critical part of their future.
Thank you. While we'll be taking up more conversations in the conclave ahead and in the panel discussion ahead on innovation and the aspects that you talked about recyclability and lifespan of materials, is there a closing message that you would like to share with the viewers right now, watching you right now, many of which are consumers as well?
First of all, my apologies for not being able to be there. I've got a personal problem, but Saachi promised me to invite me again the next session. So I will do all my best really to come and to spend some valuable time together with you. But what is making me more happy is to see a country like India, which is for sure the most incredible place of the next couple of decades at least, that is really changing and starting to consider the planet and making things in the right way, what the local people have to do. So please keep pushing and enjoy the show. It will be for sure very interesting and educational. And good luck, Saachi.
Thank you, Giulio, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Ciao.
Well, we all, I'm sure, wish Giulio and his family good health and a quick recovery. We have, in fact, Aquafil represented here today by Sergey Burratin. I'd also like to introduce the other panelists. Nachiket Barve is a costume designer and the founder of his organization. He's, in fact, also an award winner multiple times over. Gaurav Gupta, another award winner, who again needs no introduction, a textile designer and the founder of Akaaro. Yogesh Chaudhary, he's a director of Jaipur Rugs, again a very famous, in fact one of the leading rug manufacturers in the country. So welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Now the world is changing, and I think from my perspective and my vintage, I have seen it change a lot in the last few years. In fact, the pace has accelerated, but I would ask Saachi to look at the change today, and especially with fashion and technology. And where is all this going when it comes to the cultural change, and how do you see it? What is it that you want to ask them first?
Very good afternoon to everyone first, and thank you for your patience. I'm going to pick up from where Giulio left it at, specifically with technology. I'm going to take my first question with Sergey. Yeah. As Giulio pointed out, the fashion industry is at a very fascinating juncture where sustainability is under the global spotlight and also under the global scanner. How do you see innovations and new materials, particularly today, shaping the landscape of fashion and across the lifestyle industry globally?
Yes, sure. Thank you for your question. Actually, it's a very, punctual and actual question, of course. And we believe that you will agree that nowadays we see a clear shift from just recycled recycling towards circular economy, which is the next step. And it's not enough anymore to be just a sustainable company to satisfy the request of the final consumer if you don't give any solution to your product, making sure that at the end of the life it's goes back to the chain, to the supply chain. And circularity can be done only as a journey and through all the chain, starting from the supplier of the yarns, raw material for the yarn, going through the chain up to the end consumer. So eco-design, it's a common, effort between the supplier, the producer, in order to make sure that the product designed is with the end in the mind, so that at the end of its life, it's going to be, retaken and reused, regenerated, recycled. And this is where we see actually synergy here in India, if you talk especially about this country, the enormous handicraft experience here, as well as social responsibility of the companies, can meet industrial scale solution of circularity, for example, as in our case. And we really see the possible synergies here, and this is where we see the future for the material.
You spoke of eco-design,
yes.
And I want to take the question to Gaurav next. You've been experimenting with both craft-based textiles and a lot of unconventional materials through your collections over the years. Can you tell us a little bit more about fabric innovation and how do you see the landscape in India for this?
So I think, generally when I design, I look probably more for meaning, and so if you put that first, obviously you'll make money. And I think I generally get bored also with a lot of things which I work with. So just to keep it exciting, you need something new. And material research generally take a long time for me. It takes almost 4 to 5 years to get used to understand a material. And like for example, we are working with this dye of late. It's been 5 years now, and we've still not launched it. So we've collaborated with a scientist where they've made these machines which can be attached to automobile, and they collect soot, and they made ink out of it, which was used for sketching. And then we took a step further. We actually used the inks and then converted them into dyes. So that process in itself took us good 1.5 to 2 years. And then eventually now we are ready with world's first batch of hand-woven textiles which are made of upcycled air. But I think it's the scale which I'm at, which is very small. It's a very tough process because it's also very laborious. And you have to create a market. There's a lot of education which needs to be done in terms of the consumers. But what happens is, let's say in terms of research we are doing now, or someone else has done earlier, I might pick upon it and then develop it, and eventually you end up creating a market. But materials, I think, are very, very important also, considering the times we are living in. Functionality is very important, and I think craft is a lot to do with experiment and innovation. So if you really want to push the envelope, we'll have to do it.
Nachiket, Gaurav spoke a lot about the craft aspect to it, and I feel in India we are very craft heavy when we talk about sustainability. There's a sort of a division in the way we look at sustainability compared to the West, which is more oriented towards innovations and innovative textiles. And here we have numerous lakhs and lakhs of crafts and craftspeople who spend laborious hours to create. Where do you find craftsmanship in the India story when we talk of sustainability, and how do you see that on the global front with materials specifically?
I think craft really is the beating heart of India. So we are one of the very few countries perhaps today where not only do we celebrate it, we also consume it. So it's not only tokenism, but it's a part of our everyday lives. I think when we talk about innovation and craft, I think it's also important to realize that innovation really is the petrol or the driving force behind the design business. We are in the business of creating new things, and the way I have been taught and the way I've kind of looked at it is design essentially becomes a problem solving tool. So when we talk of innovation, it's at many, many levels. It's not innovation only at the material level, it's innovation also in terms of knowledge sharing, because I mean, today you have the chance to be linked in ways that never happened before. And third is also, I think, innovation in terms of how is it that we are spreading this information? How is it that so all of the elements come together? I mean, material is something, of course, that like science plays a part. Curiosity, like Gaurav said, plays a part, where you're kind of seeking more, wanting to kind of experiment more. But along with that, also I feel I'm kind of going to digress a little bit, is all of this is wonderful, but I think what we also need to learn along with innovation and relearn is the art of patience. I think, today we all want it now, we want it immediately, and we want more and more and more of it. And I think somewhere innovation also can apply at the stage where, say for example, all of us sample collections. What if you just made 5 and use maybe virtual reality, maybe use something else to show customers that these are the 50 variations possible of those without having to make those. I've always kind of, as a label, this jacket is about 8 or 9 years old and I still wear it with pride. So it's something about buying less, buying better, wearing it more, repairing it, mending it, and really forming a bond with the objects that you have. Like the gorgeous carpets they make, they're made to last generations. It's the same with clothing as well. We somewhere kind of got into this whole trap of wanting it now and wanting it to wear this evening, and maybe we just need to learn to wait a little bit, to know that good things come to those who wait, and it's not going to be immediate gratification. And that's where innovation and technology can also play a part in terms of tempting us, showing us a realistic adaptation of how it is going to look, but also making us wait for it. Because I feel wastage and overproduction is truly one of the biggest problems of sustainability, which if you cannot quell that part of it, no matter which yarn you use or what you do, if there are just mountains of merchandise being made and just sitting around, it serves nobody any good.
So Yogesh, while he mentioned about rugs, do you see this innovation change the way the consumer psyche is working today? Do you find that they are now looking at it differently?
Absolutely. I think everybody.
So what is the change?
I think we're in Delhi, and I think it's from a pollution perspective, we're the epicenter of I think pollution in India. And we get a lot of people now who want to move already from a city like Delhi to Jaipur because they don't want their young generation to be living in a city which is so polluted. So I think earlier it was more like a trend word where a lot of people would say it, but they didn't. From a day to day, it was not impacting them. But we're seeing that today because of the greed that I think the world has gotten into. It's impacting you can feel it in your daily lives, and I think the more it happens, the more people will become conscious. So I think it's started to happen. There's a lot of conversation around it, but I think usually people respond late once we're already on the bed, and not before we could say.
Yogesh, you have a very unique business model, though. You've been able to bring together artisans from across the country and produce at the scale that you do. Could you shed some light on how you merge technology to make sure you can make that level of scale with so much handwork happening across the country? Because as Nachiket rightly pointed out, people need patience, consumers need patience. So what's the secret sauce?
There's no secret sauce. I think we just, my father always says that, sustainability cannot start without love. So where there's no love, there's no sustainability. And I think our model, and I think maybe in his words is that it's love and compassion driving the model, and then everything else comes into place, in short. So I think that's the secret sauce of saying that, we make decisions maybe which are directly not very business-oriented decisions, but they are maybe the more long-term and better decisions. And but technology definitely plays a big part in our business because we are spread in 600 villages around the country where we manufacture goods in the homes of weavers. To know and to update a customer on where the rug is and when it's getting ready and all of that. We have a lot of technological integrations where I can immediately tell the status of a rug and, a lot of things. So we've invested a lot in technology. So, on our website, our customers can log in and see exact statuses and dates and a lot of other things. It helps manage the, the back end and the management of the business. And also now I think the digital marketing and, I think from that perspective also, I think we've tried to be very innovative on our digital side to kind of see how we can really, create a voice in an industry where there's no voice, So carpet, when people look at carpet, they don't really, it's just a carpet. And we've tried to change that a little bit by, bringing in emotions in the product and the business.
Sergey, hearing both Nachiket and Yogesh, we understand that India is such a craft-oriented. Everything happening in innovation and technology is not on the material front per se. It's more on the back end of things. How do you look at a material like Econyl making an entryway in India today with the designers? Because there has been a lot of talk of Econyl wanting to come to India and explore working with Indian designers and in a way compete with Indian textiles. So where do you see the opportunities?
Yes, first of all, our material is so unique. It's unique in the world. So yes, there is competition. There are some other solutions, but what we are offering, we offer the solution to the, to the request. The market is becoming more and more pooling market. So the final consumer is the one who is asking for more sustainable solution. And then everybody else has to adapt. Either because of the business requiring or because, as in case of Jaipur, it started even before by passion, by love, and what he was saying about. So in our case, being at a pooling market, the meeting point is here in India to satisfy the request of both domestic market and even more of the market outside. And there is much more and more, request for transparency as well, because the phenomenon of greenwashing is spreading around, and people are, demanding really to be more precise in communication, in explaining and showing the numbers. And we believe in India we have great opportunity, as I was saying before, of making this synergy of social responsibility, of great designers, and our innovative product, which is circle.
I could see you nod, Nachiket. You want to come in?
I think what you made, what the question you asked him was very pertinent, because I don't think they have to be in loggerheads with each other, whether you're talking of traditional craft and innovation. We were just having this discussion before the panel began, saying history by itself can be claustrophobic and modernity by itself can be boring. So it's really a mix of tools where I think interesting design solutions lie. So, it could be like their fabric with maybe an interesting take on surface embellishment from India.
Yes.
It could be, it doesn't have to kind of be either or as a situation. I think you cannot resist change. You only can adapt to it.
And that is why we are speaking about synergy, meeting the strong points of us and handicrafts
Absolutely,
here.
we
don't want to substitute anything. We want to complement.
100%. The complementary is really the way to go. Even today, when we kind of look at the idea of clothing, and in the last maybe 100 years, even if you talk of Indian fashion, so much of it has to do with, we are still referencing the global fashion as well. It's the 50s and the 60s and the 70s which keep coming back in different avatars, raising their Medusa-like head. But apart from that, has there really been, crazy innovation? Or has there been something which has been kind of like a radical paradigm shift in terms of how we are dressing? No, we are still wearing denim, which was invented in the 50s, and your father's wearing a suit, which was probably even older, and so fundamentally the items have stayed the same. What has changed is the expression. So whether it is the textile, the detail, but so maybe innovation is very badly required, because that's how you take fashion into the future as well. You cannot escape the future; it's going to catch up. So can you make it maybe, like for example, as a designer, the issues I face, with creating garments sometimes is, can I make it easier for dry cleaning? Can I make it, more stain resistance? Can I make it something which doesn't pill, or, so if technology can help in those things, then craft finds better expression, because, you are kind of supporting what is beautiful, but giving it more protection or more, they really go hand in hand. They don't have to kind of fight with each other.
So I'm going to open this out to both Gaurav and Yogesh, because I could see you both agree with Nachiket on his point. Can we really call craft sustainable without looking then at the entire system of the end of life cycle of a product?
You mean to say, so see, end of life cycle is just a term which I think for me, it's kind of, again, so craft in itself is like that, it's in terms of design, specifically in India. I think we don't need to question that, and we don't need to talk about that whole end of life cycle, because I think it's a part of our everyday life. It's heavily integrated into how we live. Primarily, that is what craft is. So it's to do with your food, it's to do with your clothes, it's to do with pretty much everything. And end of life cycle, I think, is coming from a point of view and the whole idea of circularity in terms of, again, materials. But I think it's a very, very sort of a wide space, and I think it's very space specific, region specific, and utility. Again, because the whole socio-economic factor plays a huge role. So if you look at a working class, they would need clothes. They can't spend a lot, but they definitely need clothes which they can keep on wearing again and again and again. Now you can't do cottons or you can't do silks for them, right? So I think it has to be very purpose specific, and somewhere we need to understand this whole thing about end of life also. I think it is, so for example, in India, we pass on clothes from one generation to other. That is more or less about usability, functionality, and end of life. I look at it more like that. It is about how your systems are designed, and I think it's the fabric of the society which kind of would define that more than the technical part of it, though there are definitely spaces where, for example, now in terms of packaging, we're using a lot of those corn biostarch bags, which are biodegradable. But again, I think there has to be a middle ground. You cannot really just go into the space, and I think craft is primarily the answer for that.
Yogesh?
No, I think I agree to whatever he said. I think there's a lot of space to definitely innovate. I think craft can, what Econyl is kind of doing is essentially what your question is that, how do we take products that have maybe come to the life cycle? I think as Indians, we've always lived a very sustainable, how when we were young, we used to have t-shirts, and when the cycle of the t-shirt ended, it became the mop, for the home. And things like that, right? So I think in the Indian ecosystem, we already have a lot of these things which I think over the years and as we've grown up have kind of been lost. But I think, with innovations, I think it can become a process and an industry altogether, because we're producing so much more than what we were earlier. So I think the scale at what, the change is needed is much higher. But definitely, I think craft is a great way to kind of, bring some of it back to life in different forms and shapes.
I'll just chime in. I think when I was kind of talking about the idea of making customers wait, I remember this eureka moment about a decade ago, and I was in London for something, and I remember seeing, going to a sandwich shop and ordering breakfast, and then going to a clothing store and seeing that there were clothes which were cheaper than that sandwich. And something really felt off, because, if you talk about what goes into making both, and how have we allowed ourselves to come to a point where people find it easier or more convenient to just discard clothes than even washing them or dry cleaning them. So there's something fundamentally wrong with how we are consuming. And, I keep hearing this complaint saying, Indian designers are expensive and Indian fashion is expensive. Hello, you can't have your cake and eat it all. You want, of course, we all want, that the people who are custodians of craft are compensated adequately, conscientiously, and they are able to make a life for themselves. That's the only way that their next generation or any new generation is going to be wanting to venture into craft. So it has to be sustainable at that level, even for them in terms of their aspirations and financially. Which means that when it kind of trickles up, it's bound to make a product expensive. But then who's asked you to go and buy 50 garments a month? Buy 2 and wear them well. So the problem that we talk about, even circular life of garments, is accelerated because of the sheer mass of merchandise being created. So, it's like a chicken and egg. So clothes are cheap, so you buy more, which means also people are exploited more. If clothes were to be more fairly priced, you could afford maybe fewer things, nicer things, buy nicer, and then we wouldn't land up in the soup that we are in. So somewhere it is going to be about customer sensitization also, and kind of putting curbs maybe, and this is not going to happen by buying one linen or jute or pretty dress and, you know, quelling your conscience for the year for buying sustainable fashion. It's really going to be about where maybe at a legislative level, or at, you know, the powers that kind of shape decisions, like there are fines and curbs and stuff to kind of stop this mass, you know, molestation of the planet by what we are doing. So, you know, if clothes were to become more expensive and you buy less and you buy better and craftspeople are, you know, supported better, then we are not going to land up with this issue maybe in another 10 years if, like, you know, somebody were to kind of, it's not just, of course, each customer can take a call, but I think bigger decisions need to be made.
It's interesting that you spoke about the premium pricing, because this is something that comes back from consumers time and again, especially when there's a sustainable or an artisanal tag involved with a product. How do you see the consumer psyche changing in any way or form when we talk about sustainable products, and when specifically with why is it expensive? How do you even answer that?
No, I mean, from my perspective, I think, you know, we came from an era where, you know, it was about really buying a product and it was not really about the price. And then we entered into an era where everything was about the price. And I think we will go back to an era where, you know, obviously, you know, you have to make more conscious choices. So, you know, I think I'm of the opinion of just very strongly believing that, you know, everything has been commoditized to a level, you know, where, you know, like the carpets that you can buy for 5,000 and similar looking carpet, you know, I would sell for like 2 lakhs, you know, for example. It's not that a lot of people don't have the money, but it's just, it's commoditized to an extent that they don't care for buying it for, say, 50,000 or 2 lakh, they would just buy it for 5,000. So I think once there's more consciousness and, you know, people are, you know, just adding to what he was saying, you know, once I think maybe we suffer a little more, people will start coming back to making more conscious choices.
You know, sorry, I also feel like, you know, education is a big part of it. Like, I mean, those of who kind of remember seeing that Rana Plaza image from Bangladesh, where so many kind of garment workers died, it gives me goosebumps now also. You know, if that is kind of, more people are more aware of how these consumer decisions are shaping everything around, I think you will think a little before touching that £1 t-shirt, you know. So I think that's where technology, social media, innovation, all of it comes in. And innovation specifically because, I mean, if I was to get a fabric or a fiber, which is going to make my clothes, you know, stay odor-free, clean, have a longer life, and they're a little more expensive, you know, and maybe like, and change today happens much faster than it happened even 5 years ago. Like every 2 years, you know, there's a newer generation kind of who's more adaptive and more, so we have to be optimistic, but we also have to be aggressive in terms of how we are carrying the message forward.
And
I just totally agree with what has been just said, that the real, you know, we see the market is becoming more and more pooling market. So there is awareness, and we need to invest more and more in that, in awareness, in education, as you rightfully said. People need to understand what is really circular, what is really sustainable. And when a market can offer a performing material, odor-free, long-lasting, and, you know, when you will explain all the characteristics your innovative material will have, then I'm sure that the customer is ready to have premium, to add premium price to the solution of performance and sustainability altogether. So,
Gaurav?
I have a very different take on this. I think it's, you know, I mean, it is to do with education, but I think it is the way it is. You can't do much about it because it's a lot to do with commitment. You know, even in terms of at the end of consumer and at the end of maker, we have a psychology here. The more expensive it is, the better it is. That's one. I don't think they know much about it, and I don't think anybody is interested. I think this is just, I mean, there is a very small percentage who is interested, but they already know. So you don't need to tell them. So it's a very, very slow process. I think it's a larger space where you have a lot of media to play a very big role. You have all the stakeholders in the industry which need to do their bit. You can't tell like, you know, a lot of people come to me in the studio in Delhi and they ask me, there's no embroidery, why should we pay? I don't say anything, it's fine. I don't give them an explanation. Because people who are interested it speaks to them.
So do you feel sustainable fashion is a bubble that's going to burst?
No, I don't believe in this term only. I don't think there is anything called sustainable. It's always been there. It'll always be there. So it's basically you all choose what it's what speaks to you. So what will speak to you is who you are. If you anyways believe in this, you're taking your shower, you know how much time you need to be in the shower for. It basically starts from that.
But if I can add, there is also a lot of confusion, People
Yeah, there is.
go to the market and you will see everything is biological, recycled, recyclable, sustainable, but what is really and how it's done, it's not there. So we need to promote
I think we
knowledge.
don't have checks, who are the people who will decide. We don't, so I was a part of this body in 2009, project called Share Talent India, which was started from the UK by Center of Sustainable Fashion. They picked up 12 designers, 6 Indians, 6 Dutch. We were all taken to London to talk about this. But I think it's a very Western narrative. So it's a very, it's good. Every time we do this, every time we speak about this, and I think...
Now we're talking of a Western versus Eastern
No,
narrative.
it's not that. I think it's just...
And then Sergey is going to be outnumbered.
No, I was about to say that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, that also, at least in Europe, and this is what I experienced the most, there is regulation is coming, regulation on European Union level, which says to us, this is our, direction, this is where Europe wants to go, and if you want to be part of European community, business community, you need to apply to the rules we request from you. And this is, again, is answer to the request of, everybody of us, just to have more clear understanding, and there will be also more clear labeling implemented. So if you want to call your product sustainable, you will have to apply to some rules. So,
I feel like, the conversation that we are having at a level of luxury fashion or designer wear is a mere molecule in the larger consumption of the larger problem. The number of clothes that, like top-end Indian designers, and how many of those are being bought, and, it's not really doing that much to the planet when you look at what the culprit really is, the mass fashion stores. And that's where, if there was a way to kind of educate, empower, legislate, and, so for example,
And if I may just interrupt there, also bring the cost down, because the mass market is very cost sensitive,
but it's
price sensitive.
But it's cost sensitive also to a point, because they're buying too much. All of us are buying too much. Yesterday I was here for some meetings, and I kind of went to the two big malls in the city, and just the staggering amount of merchandise that is there. And maybe if you had like innovative fabrics, innovative garments, different ways of wearing, you buy fewer nicer things, wash them more, wear them more. But that would be where the customers, to give an analogy, like if you talk of, say, children's toys, and anything which has lead is off the table. So anything which is polluting or is not sustainable, if in the longer term, if that were off the table, then customers have to choose from what there is.
Do you agree with that?
To do with policy. See, so now this is what it actually goes down to. It goes down to technically the government of the day, right? What we are doing with what, let's say, is happening in India in terms of petrol or diesel, they're moving toward clean oil, CBD, ethanol and all that. They are thinking in that direction. There is a lot of circularity in terms of how do you generate, let's say, the leftover crops waste and then used in. So it's happening, it's definitely happening. But that's what I say. If there is a problem, it's not that. I think people are looking at it, they are trying to create solutions about it. So I'm actually okay. So I think, it's...
Yogesh, are you okay with it too? Because your rugs are not bought every day by the same customer, I guess. It's more long term.
Right. No, I think you have to be conscious, and I strongly feel we're destroying the planet at a pace so rapid that maybe our own survival is at question. So I think if we do it today, great. Otherwise, we'll have to do it just for our own survival, So I don't think we have too much option to the way we're, kind of running the planet right now.
Just before I hit my last question, can we really reverse the damage? This is something a lot of people ask, and I asked Julia also earlier. Is it possible for us to reverse the damage, whether it's with craft or with innovation?
If I may start. our process, Econyl process, is made out of 4 main steps. And the most challenging one is the first one, which we call rescue. Because as Mr. Giulio Bonazzi was saying, we are collecting the waste, P6, nylon 6 waste, all over the world. And this is the biggest challenge. And now in India, we also started the first import from India to Europe of nylon waste to be regenerated in our plant in Slovenia. And we believe, again, that sooner or later we will run out of the waste. It will not be enough. This already happens to PET. You know, PET is so expensive because everybody now wants recycled polyester. And it's expensive, it's not available. Sooner or later, nylon will also not be available at the market. So we believe, yes, it's reversible. And if, again, we create the goods with the end in mind, the new products, I believe that sooner or later the problem can be solved.
Well, you may run out of nylon waste, but there are many other waste out there.
We are taking care of nylon, and we invite everybody to take care of everything else.
Nachiket, what do you feel? Is it reversible?
You know, I think the damage, if you kind of, like, if you look at so many other aspects of what we've done to the planet, I think it's massive degradation. But I think anything is possible with intentions and ambition. So, I mean, if, like I keep saying, like, you know, I mean, if man can go to the moon, and that level of innovation is possible. I mean, it's only a matter of very, very clear intentions and implementing it in places where everything is possible. I'll give you a small example. So I also do costume for film. And one of the things that I feel very proud about is if you see on a regular film set, like in a day, like you've got about maybe like 400 people, 500 people who are drinking maybe 4, 5, 6 bottles of those little water bottles in plastic, which amounts to, I mean, you can do the math. And for a film like Tanaji, like I was like instrumental in bringing about that change to make everybody carry their own water bottle. So you're talking about 100 days of filming, and can you imagine the amount? So it's just one person who saw that and decided to implement that change. So it's about being very clear about your intentions. I mean, governments can do anything. I mean, like, you know, like, thank you. And you know, wherever you can, in the smallest ways possible, you know. So if, I mean, this is just one small instance. I mean, governments literally can do anything that they want. You know, they can stop a currency being operational. They can change rules overnight. Anything can happen. So I mean, if there was intention and if there was understanding of the seriousness, I am very optimistic and I'm very positive that we definitely can do in the longer run, because that there is no way out. It's not like this is an option. It is mandatory.
Gaurav, what do you say?
Yeah, I think you don't have an option. So it's more and more people are coming into the fold, and I think it is going to happen eventually. But again, as I always say, it's a cycle. So, and we don't know how much damage. Like 2 years of COVID did a lot of untimely damage, I think. I think a lot of things became, you know, there was a lot of healing in terms of planetary level. So it is that balance, right? So it's I think nature is more intelligent than we are. So yeah, it'll find its way. Maybe we will be extinct and things will be better.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. We can coexist.
We have to do a bit then. We have to. It is a lot of commitment. You know, it's not. It is individual commitment.
But I agree that the world has to learn to coexist in many ways. But that's another subject for another discussion, because competition is not necessarily always bad. It can help you grow. Conflict resolution, that's another subject. So, but at the end of the day, at one level, we always get things interlinked. And I agree with you that things need to be looked at, and I think they need to be looked at very carefully.
I think it has a lot to do with sacrifice. If you really want to be sustainable, you'll have to give up. So you go back to your books to read. We've always had it. That is actually in a nutshell that what it is about. Now, how much humans can do that, we don't know. So it's a tough thing. It's not an easy thing to do.
I think on that philosophical note, unless you have any other questions, we could open it up for questions from the audience. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We've been speaking about being conscious from your side. The customers that you serve, how conscious are they when they come to you? Do they actually tell you, listen, I want this piece to be made, but I want this to be made in a sustainable way?
So I think a lot of the big companies that we work with are getting very conscious about this.
The customers, the consumers, the end consumers.
End consumer, I think that it's a small percentage today. From at least from my Jaipur's perspective, I think that's a 5 to 10% customers who are conscious about what they're buying. But I think over 90% for now don't really care on, they just want to buy something that they look at nice. But might be different for different people.
Yes, I have different vision. We receive every day tens of emails to our econyl.com portal through that portal asking us and saying, we would like to have something made of your product. Can you please indicate to us who is your partner, who is the best one to satisfy our request? And the number is growing. So I would say yes, we definitely see, and those are the real end consumers, people who are looking for sustainable solutions. So we would say yes.
How do you believe in sustainability? Like every other brand over there has a tag on it, right? And you have all of these very expensive certificates in Europe and across the world, which are like fair trade and all of that. But at the grassroots levels, those certificates are not there. But true sustainability really happens there. So what do you believe in as consumers? Do you believe a tag? Do you really believe that a company with those certificates? We don't have clean water in Africa, India, Vietnam, Cambodia, where sustainable textiles are made. But they say that your fair trade company needs to have like that certification with the clean water. Is it possible? Do you see a future? Is it realistic?
No. Because I know this, and we've been having this conversation, which actually becomes about global north versus global south. So we know, because we work at a grassroots level in India, specifically if people who work in exports, sometimes how the certifications are done. There is this whole process around it. And a very close friend of mine, in fact, both of us, a common friend we have, who's a very good exporter, has no idea about what it is about. He calls me a day, he said, my buyer wants this, which is the right lab, picks up things, goes there, get it, does some, under the table business. That's it, he's growing at a very fast pace. And this is how it works. So I think it is, see, this is where the problem is, we really need to be very confident about what we do. So what we are doing here specifically, let's say what I started with in 99, 2002, one of my teachers is here, who's taught me in college. My final project was about, I never knew that it is recyclability. We used a lot of waste material. And that's why I say it's a very tough thing. You have to stick to your guns, and you just have to keep on doing it, keep on doing it, keep on doing it. And still there are people who come with big names, big marketing budgets. Suddenly they'll change everything. But I think that's how it is. It's a minority versus a majority kind of a thing. So I don't think tags are, that's the facade we have, but that's how it will be.
There's a lady who wants to ask a question here. Yeah, microphone.
Hi. It's been a very interesting conversation you've had, because you both addressed very significant points, which is Nachiket, that's very important. And Gaurav, you are absolutely hands-on when it comes down to the reality of doing business. But the fact is, we have to blend the two of you. How do we do that? Because I have a brand which I have consciously created, which is trying to bring both of you together. What would your advice be? Wouldn't it be just to create a strong awareness among people, talk about it, create policies, create things, but also create an environment of talking right? It's not about craft, it's not about just the materials, it's about awareness. Getting away by saying the labs are testing wrong, honestly, that's not what we want to say here, because that's about consciousness. Now, if you're going to leave our consciousness behind, then it's not about just sustainability, then it's about credibility, it's about life. I wouldn't want to think in those lines, but there is a blend which has to come in between the two of you. How do we do that? It's a struggle, but it's a question which needs to be answered.
See, again, I've been doing that, and that's what I'm doing right now. You know what you just said, I'm talking. And I'm not an activist. See, I'm a maker, I'm a creator. That's what makes me happy, so I do that on a daily basis. Now the fact that doing what I do, I've come a long way. And I've grown at a very slow pace. Now it's for people to see. See, it's about, I understand when you talk about awareness and education. Now, it's a very, very complex and a wide space. The governments are interested. There is a policy work happening. For example, I am working with a university very closely in Ahmedabad, Anant, where there is this whole module being designed. But it's for people to identify. It's not my job. My job is I've been doing it forever. I've been doing it for good 20 years now. It's for people to know. I can't single-handedly, I do what I do and I don't want to sing songs about it. It's just that we know what we're doing, and again, if you have that right product, I've created my tribe. There are people who understand what I do. They come to me. And at the same time, they buy everything else also. And I also don't think what other people are doing is wrong or what I'm doing is right. I think it has to coexist. You cannot be 100% sustainable also. It won't work.
If I could just interrupt you there for a second. You're very passionate about what you do, and you say you do what you do. Give us a secret. How did you become so passionate about this?
I have no idea.
Because if we could know that, it would be nice.
No, it's just that you like what you do. I think that's about it.
Yes,
it's
but
as simple as that.
That secret, if you can crack
maybe I have
and spread it around, you'll have many more people.
I think it's very spiritual for me. So it's just that it just comes to you. It's like you're an artist. We're all into creative businesses, and I think I'm sure it's the same for everyone.
To answer your question, I don't think change has to be like an explosion. It can be like a constant chipping away. So you can kind of do what you do in the best way that you think is possible under those circumstances and keep fighting the crusade. I mean, like he said, you have to, for a business to make any impact, it also has to be sustainable in terms of its entity as a business. So you may not be able to achieve maybe 100%, maybe you're achieving 40 one day, 80 one day, 100 one day. But I mean, the intention and the ambition has to be there.
That's exactly what I said. That, both of you have to blend with your thought process, because unless people like you significantly talk the right way, it becomes difficult even for a consumer to correlate. I mean, like she very well said, these tags, what is the relevance? They get very confused. Now, how do they know whether this brand with that tag is saying it right, or this brand with this tag or without that tag is saying it right? Now, this is where I think, like you mentioned the cars. Today, we are all thinking of buying hybrid cars. It's becoming a way of life. The same way I think apparels need to become. It's becoming the need of the hour. Cosmetics have become your need of the hour. You want to go back to having your haldi milk, which is the golden milk. So I think apparels need to get that kind of crusading conversations happening also. I mean, that's my viewpoint.
Well said. Thank you. I could see Sumiran raise her hand there, and that's the last question we'll take.
Hi, good afternoon. The question I have is coming out of a recent casual midweek rooftop gathering we had and a discussion that was happening there, and it'll be nice to see a variety of perspectives or layered perspectives on this topic. It started with everyone talking about who's wearing what, and someone made a comment about how the mass fashion, the fast fashion brands are at least trying to make an effort to recycle material, and then there was a dismissive head nodding that went around the room saying, oh yeah, I mean it's very nice to put a little bin there and say put your clothes here, but we all know it's just going to go into the landfill. And everyone said, yeah, of course, I mean that's it. So there's that room was a snippet of perhaps larger attitudes. But the question I want to ask is, we are in a time where fashion brands or beauty brands, wellness brands are being very transparent about their manifesto, their sustainability manifesto. They are being honest about their long-term plans, about how they want to go from 5% to 50% to 100% sustainable. In terms of what is happening in the landfills, can we really hope for some kind of transparency in terms of information and knowledge about what's actually happening, not just in the landfills, but to the space that is being designated as a landfill? Is there transparency there? Can we hope for it in the future, or is that an unrealistic expectation?
Isn't it a government thing? I think it's a policy question. I don't think it's got anything to do with us.
I'm not completely aware. That's why I just put it out there for any insights whatsoever.
I don't think we would be as qualified to answer that. But I think at the next rooftop gathering, maybe the question you want to ask is, when somebody says, oh, you wore that dress to XYZ's party, and you should say proudly, because it's well made. I think that will kind of reduce consumption,
Right.
make you buy more, wear it more, repair it more, style it differently, and then we would maybe have 50% less product to dump in the landfills in the first place.
Correct, indeed. Thank you.
In India, women are increasingly being recognized as an underutilized economic asset as well, besides being a powerful ally for climate action. While that's a good sign, I think we have a long way to go, and that's where collectives like Women's Climate Collective come in to enable just transition in this space. We need more women talking about climate change. We need more women working in climate action, because these are all lived experiences, and since women are one of the most vulnerable groups that's impacted by climate change, we need to involve the opinion and experiences of women while crafting solutions for the same. And WCC hopes to also amplify the voices of these women.
On that note, I want to thank each one of you for being here today and for adding so much value and insight to this conversation. And we can break for high tea after that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.